You have been hiding since before you could walk. Your mother keeps you in the papyrus marshes of the Nile Delta, a place called Chemis, and she tells you the same thing every night. Stay in the reeds, stay quiet, stay alive. She is Isis. You are Horus, and the man sitting on the throne of Egypt right now is the one who murdered your father. That man is Seth. He didn't inherit the throne, he took it by killing his own brother Osiris and sealing him inside a coffin built to his exact measurements. Egypt under Seth is not ruled so much as endured. The red desert creeps in, the storms come up out of nowhere, and the order your father once kept, the Egyptians called it Ma'at, has been replaced by whatever Seth decides on a given day. Meanwhile, your father hasn't disappeared. Osiris now rules the underworld, the duat, the same domain where every soul's heart will one day be weighed against a feather. But a dead king ruling the dead isn't enough. Egypt still needs a living king on the throne, and by the rules the gods themselves invented, that title has to pass to a son. So you grow up, and when you're old enough, you go to claim it. The account of what happens next survives on a single papyrus, Chester Beatty Papyrus I, copied by a scribe under Ramesses V around 1147 BCE, found among a private collection at Deir el-Medina and now held at the Chester Beatty Library in Dublin. Egyptologists Alan Gardiner, who first published it in 1931, and later Miriam Lichtheim and R.O. Faulkner, translated the case that opens when you bring your claim before the Ennead, the tribunal of 9 senior gods, presided over by the sun god Ra-Harakti. You don't get one trial. You get 4 in courts with names like small stage sets, the Path of Truths, Horus, who is before the horns, the Field of Rushes, the Pool of the Field. Each time, the Ennead rules that you are right and Seth is wrong. Each time, nothing happens. Ra refuses to accept the verdict because Ra never wanted the throne handed to someone so young, and a 9-god committee that can't outvote its own chairman just keeps trying the same case again. 80 years. That's how long the papyrus says this drags on. 80 years now that we have been in the tribunal, and they have been unable to pass judgment on us. Not 80 years of open war. 80 years of legal deadlock, the most Egyptian possible way for a succession crisis to play out, on paper, in front of committee, forever. So the contest moves to something harder to stall. A boat race, in vessels built of stone. Seth builds his out of real stone and it sinks the moment he pushes off, exactly like every stone boat ever built by anyone would. You build yours out of pine, then plaster and paint it to look like stone. Seth never notices the difference until you're already ahead of him, and the trick works precisely because it's cheap and obvious. Nobody said the succession crisis had to be dignified. It gets uglier before it gets funnier. In one version of the story, you and Seth turn into hippopotamuses and fight underwater while your mother watches from the bank. She throws a harpoon to help you, misses, and strikes you instead. She tries again and hits Seth. In the chaos and fury of the moment, you turn on Isis herself. Thoth, the god of writing and reckoning, has to step in to calm the house down before the case can even continue. Then Seth does something that leaves a permanent mark. During one of the physical rounds of the feud, he gouges out one of your eyes, sometimes both, depending on which telling you read, and the pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writing in Egypt, over 4,000 years old, put it in blunt language. The eye of Horus, which Seth has trampled. The eye of Horus, which he has pulled out. The eye gets put back. How depends on who's telling the story and when. Pyramid text spells from the Old Kingdom simply say the damage was made whole again. Later tradition credits Hathor, who fills the empty socket with gazelle's milk. By the Greco-Roman period, temple inscriptions describe Thoth and 14 other deities restoring it piece by piece over 15 days. Mirrored against the 15 days it takes the moon to wax from dark to full. 3 different eras, 3 different mechanics, 1 healed eye. The wedjat, worn afterward as Egypt's most common protective amulet. There's a stranger episode tied to that same eye, and Egyptologist Herman Velde, in his 1977 study, Seth, God of Confusion, argues it's really the same incident told twice. In it, Seth tries to dominate and humiliate you one night to weaken your legal claim. Isis turns his own move into evidence. She preserves what he left behind, and when the case reopens, his body testifies against him in front of the whole Ennead. In some versions, the god Thoth is even said to have emerged from Set's forehead afterward as a disk of light. It's an uncomfortable scene by modern standards, and Egyptologists still argue over how literally to read it. What's not in dispute is what it's doing there. Turning an assault into an evidence exhibit is exactly the kind of pointed, almost legal satire humor scholars find running through this papyrus. 80 years in, with the Ennead still split, someone finally asks an elder for a ruling. Neith, an ancient goddess whose cult predates the dynasties themselves. Her answer on the papyrus is one line: award the office of Osiris to his son Horus. She adds a consolation prize for Set, marriage to two foreign war goddesses, Anat and Astarte, imported into Egypt's pantheon from Canaanite religion. Ra is furious at being overruled by his own mother figure. Everyone else treats the matter as settled. It isn't, not yet. Osiris finally writes his own letter from the underworld, and it isn't diplomatic. He points out that he is the one who grows the grain the living gods eat, and that every god who dies eventually answers to him. If the throne doesn't go to his son, he warns, he'll send his messengers up from the Duat, and nothing up here will stop them. The Ennead reads it in silence. The final ruling comes from Geb, the earth god, father of Osiris himself. The throne goes to Horus. Set isn't executed or erased. He's given a new job, riding at the front of Ra's solar bark every night, fighting off the serpent Apophis before it can swallow the sun. Egypt keeps him around, on duty, useful, and thoroughly demoted, which is a very Egyptian way to end a succession war, not with a body, with a reassignment. Here's the twist nobody puts on the amulet. The Wedjat eye wasn't only worn for protection, it was cut into 6 standard pieces, each one a fraction: 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 1/64. Scribes used these exact fractions to measure grain by the hekat, Egypt's basic unit for wheat and barley rations. Add all 6 together and you get 63 64ths, not a whole one. The missing 64th wasn't a mistake. Ancient commentators said it stood for the bit of magic Thoth supplied to make the eye whole again. That system sat forgotten until the Rind mathematical papyrus, bought by the Scottish antiquarian Alexander Henry Rind in 1858, and later translated in full by Arnold Buffum Chase in 1927, put it back in front of modern mathematicians. A myth about a mutilated god's eye is also, quietly, one of the oldest surviving fraction systems on Earth. The court case didn't stay in a papyrus either. From Egypt's very first kings, the ruler on the throne carried what's called a Horus name, written inside a rectangular frame called a serech, topped with a falcon. Archaeologists have traced it back past Hor-Aha, past a shadowy pre-dynastic ruler called Iri Hor, all the way to inscriptions scratched into rock at Wadi Amira in the Sinai. The idea behind it never changed for 3,000 years. The living king on the throne is Horus. When he dies, he becomes Osiris, and his son becomes Horus in turn. The myth wasn't decoration for the monarchy, it was the monarchy's actual legal argument for why power should change hands at all. Not every Egyptian read Set the same way at every point in history, and that matters more than it sounds. For most of the pharaonic period, he's a rough, difficult but legitimate god, Ra's own defender against chaos. Then, after Assyrian armies devastated Egypt in the 7th century BCE, during the reign of Psamtik I, temple texts start recasting Set as something closer to pure villain, blamed retroactively for the foreign invasion itself. Scholars still argue over how political the original contest story even was, whether it echoes real conflicts between rival regions before Egypt's unification, or whether it was always a religious and literary drama and not a coded history lesson at all. Both readings are on the table, neither is settled. So the marshes go quiet again, and this time it isn't because you're hiding. You're not the boy in the reeds anymore. Somewhere past this moment, your father's court still needs one more servant, one god whose job is to make sure a body survives its own death long enough to reach that scale in the first place. Anubis, and the strange, exact science of keeping a corpse from becoming nothing at all.